The veil lifted and Rowan Blackthorn's world stopped. He'd steeled himself for this, marrying a woman he'd never seen, a transaction wrapped in silk and tradition. His creditors were circling. The estate was bleeding gold. This wedding was survival, nothing more. He'd convinced himself the bride would be plain, forgettable, easy to ignore. But Lydia Vale wasn't plain. She was sharp-eyed and unflinching, and when her gaze locked onto his, something inside him cracked open. This wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't going to be safe. What he didn't know yet was that she'd built her reputation on lies, dangerous, deliberate lies, to escape a man who wanted to own her. And now Rowan had just signed his name to a contract with a woman who refused to be owned by anyone. If you want to see how far this story reaches, how two people built on survival and pride tear each other apart just to rebuild something real, stay with me. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Hit that like button. Because this is only the beginning. The carriage rattled through London's rain-slicked streets, and Rowan Blackthorn sat rigid against the velvet cushions, feeling every jolt like a sentencing. Outside, the city blurred. Gray stone, iron railings, smoke curling from 1,000 chimneys. Inside, silence pressed against him like a hand over his mouth. His valet, Clarence, sat across from him, pretending to read a folded news sheet, though Rowan could see his eyes weren't moving. "Say it," Rowan muttered. Clarence looked up, feigning confusion. "Your Grace? Whatever it is you're thinking, say it now or swallow it forever." The older man folded the paper with deliberate care. "I was only thinking, sir, that today might not be the disaster you've convinced yourself it will be." Rowan's laugh came out sharp and humorless. "A disaster would be preferable. Disasters end. This is a life sentence. Marriage, Your Grace, not exile. To a woman I've never met, never seen. A woman whose family was so eager to marry her off, they didn't even require a courtship." Rowan stared out the window, watching a street vendor shove a cart through the mud. "That tells me everything I need to know. It tells you her father is a practical man. It tells me she's either mad, scarred, or so plain they had to hide her until the contract was signed." Clarence said nothing to that. What could he say? The truth was plain enough. Gerald Vale, a shipping magnate with more money than nobility, had approached Rowan's solicitor 6 months ago with an offer so generous it bordered on obscene. A massive dowry. An injection of capital that would save Blackthorn Manor from the rot of debt that had been eating it alive since Rowan's father drank and gambled the estate into ruin. All Rowan had to do was marry the daughter. No courtship, no introductions. The girl would be delivered to the altar, and Rowan would say the words that bound him. He'd signed the papers in a fog of desperation and brandy, telling himself it didn't matter. Marriage was a business arrangement among people like him. Love was for poems and paupers. He would do his duty, keep the estate afloat, and otherwise leave the girl to her own devices. That was the plan. But now, as the church spire came into view through the rain, something cold and tight coiled in his chest. "What if she expects something from me?" he said quietly. Clarence tilted his head. "Such as?" "Affection. Attention." Rowan's jaw worked. What if she's one of those women who reads novels and thinks marriage is supposed to be pleasant? Rowan shot him a look. Clarence smiled faintly. "Then you will manage, as you always do." "I don't want to manage. I want to survive this day and move on." "Then survive it well, sir. The staff is waiting. The tenants are watching, and Miss Vale, whoever she is, deserves at least the appearance of respect." Rowan didn't answer. The carriage lurched to a stop outside St. Margaret's, and a liveried footman opened the door, letting in a gust of cold, wet air. He stepped out onto the stone path, and the world seemed to go silent. The church loomed ahead, Gothic and gray, its stained glass windows glowing faintly in the dim light. A small crowd had gathered despite the rain. Curious onlookers, a few journalists scribbling notes, merchants hoping for a glimpse of the elusive Duke of Blackthorn, who rarely appeared in public since his father's disgrace. Rowan straightened his coat, adjusted his cuffs, and walked toward the entrance with the mechanical precision of a man heading toward the gallows. Inside the church was warm, lit by hundreds of candles that flickered in the draught. The scent of lilies hung heavy in the air. Rows of pews were filled with guests. Vale's business associates, a few distant Blackthorn relatives who'd crawled out of the woodwork now that there was money involved, and a smattering of London society's most shameless gossips. At the front, near the altar, Gerald Vale stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. When he saw Rowan, he nodded once, sharp and satisfied. Rowan nodded back and took his place at the altar. The vicar, a reedy man with ink-stained fingers, gave him a sympathetic look. "Nervous, Your Grace? No? Ah, well, that's good." Rowan didn't bother clarifying. Nervousness implied hope. He felt nothing but a dull, grinding resignation. The organ swelled and the congregation rose. Rowan turned. The doors at the back of the church opened, and there she was. Or rather, there was a figure in white, veiled so heavily he couldn't make out a single feature. She moved slowly down the aisle on her father's arm, her gown trailing behind her like a whisper. Rowan's hands tightened at his sides. She was tall, he noted. Taller than he'd expected. Her posture was straight, almost rigid. Her hands, gloved in white silk, rested lightly on her father's arm. And that veil. It wasn't the delicate lace most brides wore. It was thick, layered, a deliberate curtain. His stomach turned. She reached the altar. Gerald Vale stepped back without a word, without even a glance at his daughter. The vicar cleared his throat and began the ceremony, his voice droning through the familiar words. Rowan barely heard him. He was staring at the veil, trying to see through it, trying to prepare himself for what would be underneath. "In sickness and in health, for richer or poorer," the words washed over him. "Until death do you part." The vicar looked at him expectantly. "I do," Rowan said. His voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. The vicar turned to the bride. "And do you, Lydia Margaret Vale?" Lydia. So she had a name. "Take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" A pause, then clear and steady, "I do." Her voice was lower than he'd expected, calm, almost amused. The vicar smiled. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." He gestured toward Rowan. "You may kiss the bride." Rowan's pulse kicked. He reached for the veil slowly, half expecting her to pull away. She didn't. His fingers found the edge of the fabric, and he lifted. The veil came away, and Rowan forgot how to breathe. She wasn't plain, she wasn't scarred. She was stunning. Dark hair pinned elegantly at the nape of her neck, skin like porcelain, flawless except for a faint, barely there scar near her temple. High cheekbones. Full lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. But it was her eyes that hit him like a fist to the chest. Green, sharp, intelligent, and utterly, completely unafraid. She looked at him the way a chess player looks at the board, assessing, calculating, already 3 moves ahead. "Well," she said softly, her voice pitched just for him. "Are you going to kiss me, or are we going to stand here all day?" The church was silent. Rowan's mind was blank. He leaned in, brushed his lips against hers, brief, perfunctory, and pulled back. Her smile widened, just a fraction. "Charming," she murmured. The congregation erupted into polite applause. Rowan barely heard it. He was still staring at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the creature he'd imagined, trying to understand why a woman who looked like this had been hidden away like a shameful secret. Lydia turned, took his arm with a grip that was firm and assured, and together they walked back down the aisle. The crowd parted. Faces blurred. The rain was still falling when they stepped outside, and a carriage waited to take them to the wedding breakfast. Rowan handed her inside, then climbed in after her. The door closed. They were alone. Lydia settled into the seat across from him, smoothing her skirts with practiced ease. Then she looked up, and her gaze pinned him in place. "So," she said, "I assume you have questions." Rowan found his voice. "1 or 2. Let's start with the obvious. You're wondering why I was veiled. Among other things." She tilted her head, studying him. "My father thought it would be easier this way. less risk of you backing out. Why would I back out? Because, she said simply, I'm not what you expected. No, Rowan agreed. You're not. Disappointing? I don't know yet. Her smile turned sharp. Honest. I appreciate that. She leaned back, crossing her arms. For what it's worth, you're not what I expected either. And what did you expect? A desperate man, old perhaps, bitter, someone who needed my father's money badly enough to ignore the rumors. Rowan's eyes narrowed. What rumors? That I'm unmarriageable, difficult, too clever for my own good. She paused. Ugly. The last word hung in the air. Rowan stared at her. You're not ugly. No, but the rumor was useful. Useful. It kept certain men away. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, something cold and sharp. Men who might have pursued me otherwise. Rowan felt the first stirrings of unease. What men? Does it matter? They're not here now. It matters if I'm going to understand what I've just married into. Lydia laughed, a low, bitter sound. You married into survival, Your Grace, same as I did. The carriage jolted over a rough patch of road, and Rowan braced himself against the seat. His mind was spinning, trying to piece together the puzzle in front of him. Why did your father agree to this? He asked. If you were as clever as you claim, he could have married you to someone with a title and money. He tried. It didn't work. Why not? She met his gaze head on. Because I refused. Rowan blinked. You refused? Every match he arranged, every courtship, I found a way to ruin it. And he allowed that? He didn't have a choice. I made myself inconvenient. She smiled faintly. But even my father's patience has limits. So when you came along, desperate, titled, and willing to sign without asking questions, he saw an opportunity. To get rid of you. To secure an alliance. Don't be dramatic. Rowan leaned back, processing. So you're saying this marriage is punishment for both of us? I'm saying, Lydia said slowly, that this marriage is an escape for both of us. From what? She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. From expectations, she said finally. From men who think they can own me. From a life where I'm nothing but a decorative piece on someone's arm. She looked back at him. You needed money. I needed freedom. This arrangement gives us both what we want, if we don't get in each other's way. Rowan studied her, this woman who'd appeared out of nowhere and upended every assumption he'd built. And if we do? He asked quietly. Get in each other's way? Lydia's smile was slow, dangerous. Then, Your Grace, she said, we'll find out just how much we're both willing to fight. The wedding breakfast was held at Vale's London townhouse, a sprawling mansion in Mayfair that reeked of new money. The rooms were grand but garish, too much gold leaf, too many mirrors, everything designed to scream wealth rather than taste. Rowan moved through the crowd like a ghost, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, smiling when expected. Lydia stayed at his side, playing her role with flawless precision. She laughed at the right moments, nodded politely, deflected intrusive questions with grace. But every time their eyes met, Rowan felt that same jolt of recognition. She wasn't what he'd expected, and she sure as hell wasn't going to be easy to ignore. The afternoon dragged on. Speeches were made, toasts were raised. Gerald Vale stood at the head of the table and gave a long, self-satisfied speech about family and legacy and the bright future ahead. Rowan drank steadily and said nothing. Finally, as the sun began to set, it was time to leave. The plan was to spend the night at Vale's townhouse, then depart for Blackthorn Manor in the morning. Rowan had been dreading this part. A servant led them upstairs to a suite of rooms on the third floor. The bedroom was enormous, dominated by a four-poster bed draped in heavy curtains. A fire crackled in the hearth, and a tray of wine and fruit had been left on a side table. The door closed behind them. Lydia walked to the window, looking out over the city. Rowan stood near the door, suddenly unsure of what to do with his hands. "I'll sleep in the sitting room," he said. Lydia glanced over her shoulder. "Why?" "Because I'm not." He stopped, fumbling for words. I don't expect anything from you. Not tonight. She turned fully, one eyebrow raised. How noble. I'm serious. I can see that. She crossed the room slowly, stopping a few feet away from him. But you should know something, Rowan. It was the first time she'd used his name. I don't need your protection, she continued, or your chivalry. I agreed to this marriage with my eyes open. I know what it entails. That doesn't mean... It means, she interrupted, that I'm not some fragile thing you need to tiptoe around. If you want to sleep in the sitting room, fine, but don't do it because you think I'm afraid of you. Rowan stared at her. Are you? Should I be? No. Then we understand each other. She moved past him toward the dressing room. I'm going to change. There's a robe on the chair if you'd like to get comfortable. She disappeared behind the door, leaving Rowan standing in the middle of the room, feeling like he'd just lost an argument he hadn't even realized he was having. He poured himself a glass of wine, drank it too fast, and poured another. When Lydia emerged, she was wearing a simple nightgown, white cotton, high-necked, nothing seductive about it. Her hair was down now, falling in dark waves over her shoulders. She climbed into the bed, settled against the pillows, and picked up a book from the nightstand. Rowan watched her, baffled. You're going to read? Unless you have a better idea. He didn't, so he went into the sitting room, found a blanket, and stretched out on the sofa. It was wildly uncomfortable. He lay there in the dark, listening to the distant sounds of the city, and tried to make sense of the day. He'd expected this marriage to be simple, cold, transactional, but Lydia Vale wasn't simple. She was sharp and strange and utterly unreadable. And Rowan had the sinking feeling that he'd just bound himself to a woman who was going to turn his entire life upside down. In the bedroom, Lydia closed her book and stared at the ceiling. She'd done it. She'd escaped. No more suitors circling like vultures. No more late-night visits from men who thought her father's money entitled them to her attention. No more locked doors and whispered threats. She was married now, untouchable. And the Duke, Rowan, was exactly what she'd hoped for. Desperate enough to agree, proud enough to keep his distance. He wouldn't interfere. He wouldn't ask questions. He wouldn't try to own her. At least, that's what she told herself as she drifted off to sleep. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, Lydia knew the truth. Rowan Blackthorne wasn't going to be as easy to manage as she'd thought, and that terrified her more than she was willing to admit. Morning came too soon. Rowan woke with a stiff neck and a pounding headache. He dragged himself upright, ran a hand through his hair, and found Clarence already waiting in the hall with fresh clothes and a disapproving look. Comfortable night, sir? Don't start. Within the hour, they were in the carriage again, this time heading north toward Blackthorne Manor. Lydia sat across from him, dressed in a dark traveling gown, her expression calm and unreadable. They didn't speak. The silence stretched for miles. Finally, as the city gave way to countryside, Lydia broke it. Tell me about the estate. Rowan glanced at her. What do you want to know? Everything? The land? The tenants? The debts? Why? Because it's mine now, too. He felt a flicker of irritation. You don't need to concern yourself with, I'm not a decoration, Rowan. Her voice was cool, but there was steel underneath. If I'm going to live there, I need to understand it. Rowan exhaled slowly. Fine. The estate is roughly 12,000 acres. We have tenant farms, a few villages, timber rights, and some mineral holdings that haven't been profitable in years. The manor itself is in need of repair. How much repair? Significant. And the debts? Considerable. Lydia's mouth twitched. You're not very forthcoming. I'm being honest. You're being vague. He met her gaze. The debts total just over £40,000. Your dowry covers most of it, with enough left over to start repairs and keep the estate running for a year, maybe two, if we're careful. Lydia nodded slowly, processing. And the tenants? What about them? How are they? Are they loyal? Do they trust you? Rowan hesitated. They tolerated my father. They're wary of me. Why? Because I've been absent. I spent the last 5 years in London, trying to distance myself from his mistakes. And now you're back. Now I'm back. Lydia leaned forward slightly. Do they know about me? They know I married. They don't know much beyond that. Good. She sat back. Then I'll have a chance to make my own impression. Rowan frowned. What kind of impression are you planning to make? She smiled. That depends on what I find when we get there. Blackthorn Manor appeared through the trees just after noon, a sprawling stone structure 3 stories tall with ivy creeping up the walls and several windows boarded over. The grounds were overgrown, the drive rutted and uneven. It looked exactly like what it was, a dying estate clinging to past glory. The carriage stopped in front of the main entrance, and Rowan stepped out first, then offered his hand to Lydia. She took it, stepped down, and surveyed the manor with the same calm, assessing gaze she'd given him at the altar. Well, she said, it's not as bad as I feared. High praise. I'm serious, the bones are good, the structure is sound. She gestured toward the overgrown gardens. This can be fixed. Before Rowan could respond, the front door opened and the household staff filed out, a line of nervous-looking servants led by the housekeeper, Mrs. Dawes, a severe woman in her 60s. Your Grace, Mrs. Dawes said, curtsying, welcome home. Thank you, Mrs. Dawes. Rowan gestured to Lydia. This is my wife, the Duchess of Blackthorn. Mrs. Dawes's gaze flicked to Lydia, and for just a moment, something unreadable crossed her face. Lydia stepped forward, her smile polite but firm. Mrs. Dawes, I look forward to working with you. Of course, Your Grace. But there was no warmth in the words. Rowan felt the tension immediately. Lydia, however, seemed unfazed. She moved down the line, greeting each servant by name, asking questions, making small observations that showed she was actually paying attention. By the time she finished, half the staff looked charmed. The other half looked suspicious. Mrs. Dawes led them inside. The entry hall was grand but faded. Marble floors scuffed and dull, portraits of dead blackthorns staring down from the walls, a massive chandelier covered in dust. I've prepared the ducal suite, Mrs. Dawes said, and dinner will be served at 7. Thank you, Rowan said. Lydia was already moving, walking through the hall, peering into rooms, running her fingers along the furniture. When was the last time this place was properly cleaned? She asked. Mrs. Dawes stiffened. We do our best, Your Grace, but with limited staff. I'm not criticizing, I'm asking. Lydia turned, her expression neutral. How many staff do we have? 12, Your Grace, including the groundskeeper. 12. Lydia glanced at Rowan. For an estate this size? We've had to make cuts, Rowan said quietly. Lydia nodded, filing the information away. Then we'll start there. Mrs. Dawes looked bewildered. Start where, Your Grace? Rebuilding, Lydia smiled. But first I'd like to see the books. That evening, Rowan found Lydia in the study, surrounded by ledgers. She'd changed into a simpler gown, her hair pinned back, a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked utterly absorbed, flipping through pages, scribbling notes. Find anything interesting? Rowan asked from the doorway. She didn't look up. Your father was either a fool or a criminal. Both, actually. These numbers don't add up. There are payments listed with no corresponding invoices. Expenses that make no sense. She tapped a page. This entry here, £500 for estate improvements. What improvements? Rowan crossed the room, leaning over her shoulder to look. I have no idea. You should. I wasn't here. You are now. She looked up at him, her green eyes sharp. If we're going to save this place, you need to know where every penny goes. I thought your dowry was supposed to solve that problem. The dowry bought us time. It didn't solve anything. She closed the ledger. We need a plan. We? Yes, we. She stood, facing him fully. I didn't come here to sit in a drawing room and embroider pillows, Rowan. I came here to build something. Build what? A life. A legacy. Something that lasts. Her voice was steady, but there was passion underneath. This estate can be great again, but only if we're both willing to fight for it. Rowan stared at her, caught off guard by the intensity in her voice. "You don't even know these people," he said. "The tenants, the staff. Why do you care?" "Because they're mine now." She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And I don't let what's mine fall apart." For a long moment they stood there, the study silent except for the crackle of the fire. Then Rowan nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "We'll do it together." Lydia smiled, a real smile, not the polite mask she wore for the staff. "Good," she said. "Then let's get to work." And just like that, the war began. Not between them, but between them and everything trying to tear Blackthorn apart. The first real clash came 3 days later, over breakfast. Rowan walked into the dining room to find Lydia already seated, a stack of papers beside her plate. She was eating methodically, toast, jam, tea, while making notes in the margins of what looked like a contract. "Morning," he said, pouring himself coffee. "We need to talk about the tenants," she said without looking up. Rowan sat down across from her. "What about them?" "Their rents are too high." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "The rents. They're unsustainable." She pushed a ledger across the table. "Look at the payment records. Half of them are behind, some by months, a few by over a year." "I know that. Then you also know that raising the rents last spring was a mistake." Rowan's jaw tightened. "That wasn't my decision. The estate manager is an idiot." Lydia set down her pen. "Mr. Grimsby has been bleeding this estate dry for years, and you've let him." "I wasn't here to stop him. You're here now." They stared at each other across the table, the air crackling with tension. Rowan spoke first, his voice controlled. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Lower the rents, forgive the back payments for anyone who's genuinely struggling, offer extended terms for those who can pay but need time. That's half our income. It's half of an income we're not actually collecting." Lydia tapped the ledger. "You can't squeeze blood from a stone, Rowan. If the tenants can't afford to live here, they'll leave. And then where will we be?" "Broke. We're already broke. Oh, this way. At least we'll have people who are loyal." Rowan leaned back, rubbing his temple. "You've been here 3 days, and you think you understand how to run an estate?" "I understand numbers, and I understand people." Her voice sharpened. "What I don't understand is why you're so determined to repeat your father's mistakes." The words hit like a slap. Rowan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't compare me to him." Lydia stood too, facing him across the table. "Then stop acting like him." He ignored the tenants, let the estate rot, and convinced himself everything was fine as long as he didn't have to look at it directly. She paused. "Sound familiar?" "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" She crossed her arms. "You spent 5 years in London, avoiding this place. And now that you're back, you're still avoiding it, hiding behind ledgers and estate managers and excuses." "I'm trying to save this place." "No, you're trying to survive it. There's a difference." Rowan's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to shout at her, wanted to tell her she had no right to waltz in and tear apart everything he'd been holding together by sheer force of will. But the worst part was that she was right. He had been avoiding it. All of it. The tenants, the debts, the slow death of everything his family had built. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Lower the rents. Forgive the debts. Do whatever you want. This isn't about what I want. It's about what's necessary." "Then it's necessary." He grabbed his coat from the chair. "I'll be in the North Field. Don't wait up." He left before she could respond. Outside, the morning was cold and gray, the kind of weather that seeped into your bones. Rowan saddled his horse himself. He didn't want company, didn't want questions, and rode hard toward the northern boundary of the estate. The fields stretched out around him, empty and vast. Some of the land had been fallow for years. Other sections showed signs of poor management, overgrazed pastures, broken fences, irrigation ditches choked with weeds. His father's legacy, rotting in plain sight. Rowan dismounted near one of the tenant cottages, a small stone building with a sagging roof and a garden that had clearly seen better days. Smoke curled from the chimney, and as he approached, the door opened. A man stepped out, Middle-aged, weathered, with the kind of face that had seen too many hard winters. "Your Grace," the man said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you out here." "Mr. Holloway," Rowan nodded. "How's the family?" "Getting by, sir. Just about." Holloway's eyes flicked past Rowan as if checking for witnesses. "Is there something wrong?" "No. I wanted to talk to you about the rent." Holloway's face went carefully blank. "I'm working on it, sir, I swear. Just need a bit more time." "You'll have it." Holloway stopped mid-sentence. "Sir, the rent's being lowered, and the back payments, they're forgiven." For a moment, Holloway just stared at him. Then his face crumpled, relief and disbelief warring for control. "Your Grace, I don't know what to say." "Don't thank me. Thank the Duchess." Holloway blinked. "The new Duchess? We've heard she's different. That's one word for it. Is it true she made old Grimsby cry?" Rowan felt a smile tug at the corner of his mouth despite himself. "Where did you hear that?" "Cook's niece works in the manor. Says her Grace tore into him something fierce over the ledgers." Rowan could picture it perfectly. Lydia, standing in the study, dissecting Grimsby's incompetence with surgical precision while the old man stammered and sweated. "It's true," Rowan admitted. Holloway let out a low whistle. "She sounds terrifying." "She is." "But fair?" Rowan hesitated. "Yes, fair." Holloway nodded slowly, processing. "Then maybe things are looking up, Your Grace." "Maybe." Rowan rode back to the manor as the sun began to set, his mind churning. He'd visited 3 more tenants after Holloway, and the reaction had been the same every time: shock, gratitude, cautious hope. Lydia had been right, and he hated how much that bothered him. When he returned, the house was quiet. He found Clarence in the hall, looking worried. "Where's the Duchess?" Rowan asked. "In the village, sir." "What?" "She left after lunch, said she wanted to meet the tenants herself." Rowan's stomach dropped. "Alone?" "She took a footman and a carriage." "Which tenants?" "I believe she started with the Merricks, sir." Rowan swore under his breath and headed for the stables. The Merricks were trouble. Old John Merrick had been a loyal tenant for decades, but his son, Tom, was a different story. Hot-tempered, resentful, and convinced the Blackthorns had been bleeding his family dry for generations. If Lydia had walked into that situation without knowing the history, he rode faster. The Merrick farm sat at the edge of the estate, a sprawling plot with decent land and a house that looked one strong wind away from collapse. Rowan saw the carriage parked outside and felt a flicker of relief. At least she was still here? He dismounted and heard voices, raised, angry, coming from inside. Rowan shoved open the door. The scene that greeted him was not what he expected. Lydia stood in the center of the room, perfectly calm, while Tom Merrick loomed over her, red-faced and shouting, "Don't care who you are. You think you can come in here and tell me how to run my own farm?" "I'm not telling you how to run it," Lydia said evenly. "I'm offering help." "Help?" Tom spat the word. "You want to help? Lower the bloody rent. Forgive the debts. Stop treating us like criminals for not being able to afford your husband's greed." "The rent has been lowered," Lydia said, "and the debts are forgiven." Tom stopped mid-rant, blinking. "What?" "Effective immediately. You owe nothing." The room went silent. Old John Merrick, sitting in the corner, looked like he might cry. Tom's face twisted with confusion and suspicion. "Why? What's the catch?" "No catch. Just common sense." Lydia gestured around the room. "You can't pay rent if you can't afford to eat, and I can't collect rent if you leave. So we're changing the terms." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Tom stared at her, trying to find the angle, the trap. Rowan stepped forward. "She's telling the truth, Tom." Everyone turned. Lydia's eyes met his, and something unreadable passed between them. "Your Grace," Tom said slowly, "didn't know you were here." "Just arrived." Rowan moved to stand beside Lydia. Not in front of her, beside her. A subtle difference, but one he saw Tom notice. "The Duchess and I have made some changes. The estate's been poorly managed for too long. We're fixing that." Tom looked between them, still wary, but some of the anger had drained from his face. And what do you want from us? He asked. Lydia answered, loyalty, hard work, honesty. If you can give us that, we'll give you fair terms and a chance to actually build something here. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once, grudgingly. All right. Old John stood, crossing the room with surprising speed. He grasped Lydia's hand in both of his voice thick with emotion. Thank you, Your Grace. Thank you. Lydia smiled gently. You're welcome, Mr. Merrick. They left a few minutes later, Rowan and Lydia riding side by side back to the manor. The sun had fully set now, and the road was dark except for the lanterns on the carriage ahead. You shouldn't have gone alone, Rowan said finally. I wasn't alone. I had a footman. You know what I mean. I do, and I disagree. Lydia glanced at him. I'm not fragile, Rowan. I can handle an angry tenant. Tom Merrick is more than angry. He's dangerous. He's desperate. There's a difference. Desperation makes people unpredictable. So does pride. She paused. You're angry I went without telling you. It wasn't a question. Rowan exhaled slowly. I'm angry because you could have been hurt. Tom's not known for restraint. He wasn't going to hurt me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She said it with such certainty that Rowan looked at her sharply. How? Lydia was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Because I know what it looks like when a man wants to hurt you. And that wasn't it. The words hung at the air between them, heavy with implication. Rowan wanted to ask, wanted to push, but something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he said, You were right, about the rents. Lydia looked surprised. I know I was, but I didn't expect you to admit it. I'm not my father. I know. They rode in silence after that, the manor lights appearing through the trees. When they reached the stables, Rowan dismounted and helped Lydia down. Her hand was small in his, her grip firm. She didn't let go right away. Rowan, she said quietly, I'm not trying to undermine you. I'm trying to save this place. Same as you. I know. Then stop fighting me. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the determination in her eyes, the steel underneath the polish. I'll try, he said. She smiled. That's all I'm asking. But the truce didn't last. 2 weeks later, Lydia made a decision that pushed Rowan to his breaking point. It started with a letter. Rowan found it on his desk one morning, addressed to him in unfamiliar handwriting. He broke the seal and read, Your Grace, it has come to my attention that your wife has been conducting business on your behalf without proper authorization. Specifically, she has been negotiating contracts with merchants and tradesmen, making financial commitments, and issuing directives to estate staff, all under the assumption that she has your full support. While I'm certain this is merely a misunderstanding, I felt it prudent to bring it to your attention. A woman of her background may not fully understand the protocols expected of a duchess. I remain your humble servant, Clarence Grimsby. Rowan read it twice, his anger building with each word. He found Lydia in the library, surrounded by fabric samples and sketches. What are you doing? He asked, his voice tight. She looked up, frowning at his tone. Planning repairs for the east wing. The roof is leaking, and half the rooms are unusable. And who authorized that? I did. You're not authorized to make those decisions. Lydia set down her pen slowly. I'm the Duchess. Of course I'm authorized. Not without consulting me first. Her eyes narrowed. I've been consulting you. For 2 weeks, I've brought you plans, budgets, proposals, and you've approved every single one. That's different. How? Because you're making commitments in my name, signing contracts, negotiating terms. He tossed the letter onto the table. People are starting to talk. Lydia picked up the letter, read it, and her expression turned to ice. Grimsby, she said flatly. He has a point. He has an agenda. She crumpled the letter. He's been skimming from this estate for years, and now that I've cut off his access, he's trying to turn you against me. That's not... It is exactly what he's doing. Lydia stood, her voice rising. And you're letting him. Well, I'm trying to maintain some semblance of order. Order? She laughed, sharp and bitter. This place was falling apart when I got here. There was no order, just chaos dressed up in tradition. So you decided to tear it all down. I decided to fix it. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. I've spent every waking hour trying to save this estate, meeting with tenants, reviewing contracts, negotiating better terms with suppliers. I've done more in 2 weeks than you've done in 2 years, and you have the nerve to question my authority? Because you don't have any. The words came out harsher than he intended, but he didn't take them back. You're my wife, not my partner. The silence that followed was deafening. Lydia's face went very still, very calm. I see, she said quietly. Lydia? No, I understand perfectly. She gathered her papers with precise, controlled movements. You wanted a wife you could ignore, someone decorative and obedient, someone who wouldn't challenge you. That's not, but you got me instead, and you don't know what to do with me. She met his eyes, and there was something cold in her gaze now, something wounded. So you're doing what your father did, pushing me aside, pretending I don't exist except when it's convenient. I never said that. You didn't have to. She walked past him toward the door. Where are you going? Rowan asked. To my room, since apparently that's where wives belong. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that sounded like a gunshot. Rowan stood alone in the library, surrounded by her plans and sketches, and felt something crack inside his chest. He'd hurt her. He could see it in the way she'd held herself, the way her voice had gone flat and distant. And the worst part was that she was right. He had been treating her like a problem to manage, not a person to trust. The days that followed were tense. Lydia retreated, not physically, but emotionally. She was polite at meals, cordial with the staff, and utterly untouchable. She stopped bringing him plans, stopped asking his opinion, stopped fighting. And Rowan realized with growing horror that he missed it, missed the arguments, the challenges, the way she pushed him to be better. Without her fire, the manor felt cold. He tried to apologize, cornered her in the hallway one afternoon and said, "We need to talk." "About what?" she asked, her tone pleasant and empty. "About what I said. I was wrong. You were honest. Lydia, sit. If you'll excuse me, Your Grace, I have an appointment with the seamstress." She walked away, leaving him standing there like an idiot. It went on like that for days, until the night everything shattered. Rowan couldn't sleep. He'd been lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying their fight over and over. Finally, he gave up and went downstairs to the study, intending to lose himself in paperwork. He found Lydia there instead. She was sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace, still dressed, her knees pulled to her chest. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red. She'd been crying. Rowan froze in the doorway. "Lydia?" She looked up, startled, and quickly wiped her face. "I'm fine." "You're not." "I said I'm fine." But her voice cracked on the last word. Rowan crossed the room slowly and sat down beside her, not touching, just close enough to feel the heat from the fire. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "There's nothing to talk about." "Lydia." She was silent for a long moment. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear it. "You're right, you know. I don't belong here." "That's not what I meant. But it's true." She stared into the flames. "I'm not refined. I don't know how to be a proper duchess. I don't know the rules, the protocols, the things I'm supposed to say and not say. That doesn't matter." "It does to them." She gestured vaguely toward the rest of the house. "The staff, the tenants, even you. They all see it. I'm pretending to be something I'm not." Rowan felt something twist in his chest. "You're not pretending," he said. "You're just different." "Different?" she repeated, tasting the word. "That's a polite way of saying wrong." "It's not." She turned to look at him, and there was so much pain in her eyes it nearly broke him. "Then why did you say I don't have authority?" she asked. "Why did you treat me like I was overstepping, like I was doing something wrong?" Rowan exhaled slowly, trying to find the right words. "Because I was scared," he admitted. Lydia blinked. "Of what?" "Of you." He ran a hand through his hair. You came here and started fixing things I should have fixed years ago. You saw problems I'd been ignoring and solved them before I even realized they existed. And it made me feel useless. You're not useless. Compared to you? He laughed bitterly. You've done more for this estate in 3 weeks than I've done in 3 years. You're smarter, braver, more capable. Stop. It's true. It's not. Lydia shifted to face him fully. You think I'm not terrified? Every single day I wake up wondering if today's the day someone realizes I'm a fraud, that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm just making it up as I go. Rowan stared at her. You hide it well. I have to. Because if I show fear, if I show weakness, they'll tear me apart. Her voice dropped. Men like Grimsby, men like... She stopped abruptly. Like who? Rowan asked. Lydia looked away. It doesn't matter. It does. Rowan, who hurt you, Lydia? The question hung between them. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she took a shaky breath. His name was Lord Pemberton, she said quietly. He was a business associate of my father's. Wealthy, titled, respected. Rowan's stomach turned. What did he do? He decided I belonged to him, that my father's money gave him the right to... She stopped, swallowing hard. He cornered me at a party, told me I should be grateful for his attention. When I refused, he grabbed me, said no one would believe me if I told, that I was nothing without my father's name. Rowan's hands clenched into fists. How did you get away? I didn't, not at first. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the tremor underneath. He kept pursuing me, showing up at events, sending letters. My father thought it was romantic, thought I should be flattered. So you made yourself ugly. Lydia nodded. Started the rumors, spread them through every social circle I could find, made myself untouchable, unmarriageable. It was the only way to make him stop. And it worked? Eventually, he moved on to someone else. She looked at Rowan, someone who couldn't fight back. The fire crackled in the silence. Rowan felt rage burning in his chest, hot and sharp and useless because the damage was already done. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't your fault. I'm still sorry. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. And I'm sorry for what I said. You do have authority. You've earned it. I was just too proud to admit it. Lydia's fingers tightened around his. I don't want to fight with you, she whispered. I don't want to fight with you either. They sat there in the firelight, hands clasped, the weight of everything they'd said and hadn't said pressing down on them. Then Lydia spoke again, her voice barely audible. I need you to trust me. I do. No, I need you to really trust me, to let me help, to stop seeing me as a problem and start seeing me as what? She met his eyes. As your equal. Rowan's breath caught. No one had ever asked him for that before. Not his father, not the tenants, not even Clarence. Everyone expected him to lead, to command, to make decisions alone. But Lydia wasn't asking to follow. She was asking to stand beside him. All right, he said. She searched his face. You mean it? Yes. A slow smile spread across her face, genuine, relieved. Then we have work to do. And just like that, the war ended. But the real battle was about to begin. The work started the next morning. Rowan found Lydia already in the study at dawn, her hair pinned back, sleeves rolled up, papers spread across every available surface. She looked up when he entered, and for the first time in days, her smile reached her eyes. Good. You're here, she said. I need your signature on these. What are they? New contracts with the grain merchants, better terms, and a proposal to consolidate the tenant leases into something actually readable. She pushed a stack toward him. Also, I'm firing Grimsby. Rowan paused mid-reach. When? This afternoon, unless you want to do it. He looked at the certainty in her face and felt something settle in his chest. No, you should do it. You've earned it. Good, because I've been looking forward to it. They worked through the morning, side by side, trading observations, challenging each other's assumptions. It felt different now. The tension was gone, replaced by something that felt almost like partnership. Almost. By noon, Lydia had assembled the household staff in the main hall. Grimsby stood at the front, looking smug and self-satisfied, clearly expecting some kind of commendation. He was about to be very disappointed. "Mr. Grimsby," Lydia said, her voice carrying across the room, "thank you for joining us. Of course, Your Grace, always happy to serve." "That's interesting, because according to these records," she held up a ledger, "you've been serving yourself quite generously." Grimsby's smile faltered. "I don't— £300 in administrative fees that have no corresponding documentation, $500 in estate improvements that never happened, and my personal favorite," she flipped a page, "a recurring payment to a London address that, upon investigation, turned out to be a gambling house." The room went dead silent. Grimsby's face turned the color of old porridge. "Those are clerical errors. They're theft." Lydia's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "And you're fired, effective immediately." "You can't. His Grace would never—" "His Grace," Rowan said from the doorway, "fully supports the Duchess's decision. You have 1 hour to clear your belongings and leave the estate. If you're not gone by then, we'll have the magistrate escort you." Grimsby looked between them, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. Then he turned and fled. The staff watched him go, eyes wide. Lydia turned to face them. "Anyone else have something they'd like to confess before we continue?" Silence. "Good. Then let's get back to work." The staff dispersed, whispering among themselves. Rowan caught fragments as they passed. "Never seen anything like it. She's terrifying. About time someone stood up to him." Mrs. Dawes lingered near the door, her expression unreadable. "Your Grace," she said quietly. "A word?" Lydia nodded, and they stepped into a side room. Rowan waited in the hall, listening. "I owe you an apology," Mrs. Dawes said. "For what?" "For doubting you. When you first arrived, I thought you were—" She paused, searching for words. "I thought you'd be like the others, the ladies who come here thinking they can play at being mistress of the house without understanding what it actually takes. And now? Now I think you might actually save this place." There was a long pause. Then Lydia said, "I can't do it alone." "I know. That's why I'm offering to help. Properly this time." When they emerged, Mrs. Dawes looked almost relieved. Lydia caught Rowan's eye and gave him a small nod. One battle down, but the war was just beginning. 3 days later, a carriage arrived unannounced. Rowan was in the north field, inspecting a new irrigation system, when one of the stable boys came running. "Your Grace, there's a visitor!" "Who?" "Wouldn't say, sir, but he's asking for the Duchess." Rowan's stomach tightened. "Where is she?" "In the garden, last I saw." Rowan found Lydia among the overgrown roses, cutting back dead branches. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and her smile faded when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" "You have a visitor." "Who?" Before he could answer, a voice called from the terrace. "Lydia, darling, there you are." Lydia went very still. Rowan turned to see a man descending the steps, tall, well-dressed, with silver at his temples and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "Lord Pemberton," Lydia said, her voice flat. Every muscle in Rowan's body tensed. This was him. The man who'd hunted her, hurt her, driven her to such desperate measures that she'd destroyed her own reputation just to escape him. And now he was here, on their land, smiling like he had every right. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," Pemberton said, still approaching. "I was in the area and thought I'd pay my respects to the new Duchess." His eyes swept over Lydia, lingering. "Though I must say the rumors didn't do you justice. You look radiant." Lydia didn't move, didn't speak. Rowan stepped between them. "Lord Pemberton," he said, his voice cold, "I don't believe we've been introduced." Pemberton's smile widened. Ah, the Duke. Forgive me. I'm an old friend of the family. Knew Lydia when she was just a girl. I'm sure you did. Rowan kept his tone neutral, but there was steel underneath. Unfortunately, the Duchess and I have a rather full schedule today. Perhaps you could leave your card and we'll arrange a more convenient time. Oh, I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to offer my congratulations. Pemberton's gaze slid past Rowan to Lydia, and to see for myself that you're happy. The way he said it, the slight emphasis, the knowing look made Rowan want to hit him. She is, Rowan said. Delightful. Pemberton clasped his hands behind his back. Then I suppose the rumors about your arrangement were exaggerated. What rumors? Oh, you know how people talk. A marriage of convenience, a business transaction, the usual gossip. He shrugged. I'm glad to see it's not true. Rowan felt Lydia's hand on his arm, a warning, or maybe a plea. It's not, she said quietly. Now please leave. Pemberton's smile sharpened. So cold, my dear. After all we meant to each other. We never meant anything to each other. That's not how I remember it. Then your memory is faulty. Pemberton laughed, a low, unpleasant sound. Still so spirited. I always did admire that about you. He took a step closer, ignoring Rowan entirely. You know, when I heard about your marriage, I was disappointed. I'd hoped we might rekindle. Get out. Rowan's voice cut through the air like a blade. Pemberton finally looked at him, really looked, and seemed to register the danger in Rowan's eyes. I beg your pardon? You heard me. Get off my land, now. I hardly think. I don't care what you think. Rowan stepped forward, forcing Pemberton to retreat. You're not welcome here. You will never be welcome here. If I see you on this estate again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. On what grounds? On the grounds that you're harassing my wife. Pemberton's expression hardened. Careful, Your Grace. I have friends in very high places. Friends who might take an interest in your financial difficulties. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Rowan smiled, cold and sharp. Then here's another fact. You touch my wife. Hell, you even look at her wrong. And I'll ruin you. I don't care how many friends you have or how much money you've got. I will burn your reputation to the ground. For the first time, Pemberton looked uncertain. You're making a mistake, he said. The only mistake I made was letting you stay this long. Pemberton's jaw tightened. He glanced at Lydia one last time, a look that promised this wasn't over, then turned and walked back toward the house. Rowan didn't move until he heard the carriage pull away. Then he turned to Lydia. She was pale, her hands trembling. Are you all right? He asked. I'm fine. Lydia, I said I'm fine, but her voice shook. Rowan reached for her, and she didn't pull away. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling the way she held herself rigid, like she might shatter if she let go. He can't hurt you, Rowan said quietly. Not anymore. You don't know that. I do. Because I won't let him. She pulled back, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. He meant what he said, about his friends. He can make things very difficult for us. Let him try. Rowan, I don't care. He cupped her face in his hands. I don't care about his friends or his money or his threats. No one gets to hurt you, not while I'm alive. Something in her expression cracked. Why? She whispered. Because you're mine. The words came out fierce, possessive. Because you're my wife, and I'm done pretending this is just a business arrangement. Lydia's breath hitched. What are you saying? Rowan didn't have an answer, or maybe he did, but he wasn't ready to say it. So instead, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and claiming, like he was trying to erase every moment Pemberton had ever touched her, every word he'd ever said. And Lydia kissed him back just as fiercely. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. I need you to understand something, he said. Whatever happens next, whatever Pemberton does, we face it together. Lydia nodded, her fingers curling into his shirt. Together. But Pemberton wasn't done. The first sign came 2 weeks later when their banker in London sent an urgent letter. Rowan read it twice, his blood turning to ice. "What is it?" Lydia asked, looking up from her correspondence. "Pemberton called in a favor. The bank is demanding immediate repayment on one of our loans." "How immediate?" 30 days. Lydia's face went pale. "How much?" £8,000. The number hung between them. "We don't have that," Lydia said quietly. "I know. Can we get an extension?" "I tried. They refused." Rowan set the letter down, running a hand through his hair. "Pemberton's making his move." Lydia stood, pacing. "There has to be something we can do. We could sell land. Not in 30 days, and selling now would be at a loss. Then we borrow from somewhere else. No one will lend to us. Not with Pemberton spreading rumors about our solvency. So what? We just give up?" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" Rowan looked at her, this woman who'd fought so hard to save his estate, who'd stood beside him when she could have walked away. "I'm saying we need to be smart, and possibly ruthless." Lydia's eyes sharpened. "What do you have in mind?" Over the next week, they worked in secret. Lydia reached out to her father's old contacts, merchants and traders who owed Gerald Vale favors. She negotiated, bargained, called in debts that had been sitting idle for years. Rowan, meanwhile, went through every asset the estate owned with surgical precision. He found 3 paintings in storage that turned out to be worth far more than anyone had realized. He sold timber rights to a logging company. He even pawned his father's watch, the one thing he'd kept as a reminder of the man he'd never wanted to become. It still wasn't enough. 3 days before the deadline, they were still £2,000 short. Rowan sat in the study, staring at the numbers, feeling defeat settle over him like a shroud. Then Lydia walked in. She was holding a wooden box. "What's that?" Rowan asked. She set it on the desk and opened it. Inside were jewels, diamonds, emeralds, pearls, all glittering in the candlelight. "My mother's," Lydia said quietly. "She left them to me. They're the only thing I have from her." Rowan stared. "Lydia, no. It's enough. I had them appraised last week. They'll cover the rest. I can't let you do that. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to." She closed the box. "This estate is worth saving. These are just things. They're your mother's, and she would understand." Lydia met his eyes. "I'm not losing this, Rowan. Not to Pemberton, not to anyone." The jewels sold for exactly what they needed. On the day of the deadline, Rowan walked into the bank and placed a draft on the manager's desk. £8,000, he said, paid in full. The manager looked stunned. "Your Grace, I wasn't expecting—" "I'm sure you weren't." Rowan's voice was ice. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an estate to run." He walked out with his head high, feeling like he'd won a battle. But the war was far from over. That night, Pemberton struck again. Rowan woke to shouting. He threw on clothes and ran downstairs to find chaos. Servants rushing through the halls, the smell of smoke. "What's happening, huh?" he demanded. "The stables, Your Grace," one of the footmen gasped. "They're on fire!" Rowan's heart stopped. He ran. The stables were at the east end of the property, and by the time he got there, flames were already consuming the roof. The horses were screaming, wild with panic. "Get them out!" Rowan shouted, plunging into the smoke. The heat was overwhelming. He couldn't see, could barely breathe, but he grabbed the nearest horse's bridle and dragged the terrified animal toward the door. Again and again, he went back in. The stable hands worked beside him, coughing and choking, pulling horse after horse to safety. Then he heard it, a voice screaming his name, "Lydia." He turned and saw her running toward the stables, her nightgown billowing behind her. "Rowan, get out! The roof's collapsing!" He grabbed the last horse and pulled, hard, just as a massive beam crashed down where he'd been standing seconds before. They stumbled out into the cool night air, covered in soot and ash. The stables burned behind them, a roaring inferno. "Is everyone out?" Lydia demanded, counting heads. "Yes, Your Grace," one of the stable boys confirmed. "All the horses, too." "Then back up. It's not safe." They watched as the building collapsed in on itself, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. "It was him," Lydia said quietly. Rowan looked at her. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Her voice was shaking with rage. This is exactly the kind of thing he'd do. Hurt you to get to me. We can't prove it. I don't need proof. I know. Rowan pulled her close, feeling the way she trembled against him. It's just a building, he said. We'll rebuild. It's not just a building, it's a message. She pulled back, her eyes fierce. He's telling us he can get to us anywhere, anytime. Then we'll send a message back. How? Rowan's jaw tightened. I don't know yet, but we will. The next morning, one of the tenant farmers came forward. Your Grace, the man said, twisting his cap in his hands. I saw something. Last night. Before the fire. What did you see? A man. On horseback. Riding away from the stables. Didn't recognize him, but... He hesitated. He had a fancy coat, like a lord. Lydia and Rowan exchanged looks. Can you describe him? Rowan asked. Tall, silver hair, moved like he owned the place. Pemberton. Rowan thanked the farmer and sent him away. Then he turned to Lydia. I'm going to London, he said. Why? To end this. How? I'll figure it out when I get there. Then I'm coming with you. Lydia, don't. Her voice was steel. You said we face this together, so we face it together. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to keep her safe, far away from Pemberton and his schemes, but one look at her face told him it was useless. All right, he said. Together. They left for London the next day. The city loomed ahead, gray and vast and full of secrets, and somewhere inside it, Pemberton was waiting. Rowan stood on the deck of the rented townhouse they'd taken in Bloomsbury, watching the streets below. Lydia was inside writing letters, gathering information. He'd promised to end this. But standing here now, staring out at the sprawl of London, Rowan felt the weight of that promise. Pemberton had money, connections, power. All Rowan had was rage and a woman he'd swear his life to protect. The question was, would it be enough? Behind him, the door opened. Lydia stepped out, a letter in her hand. I found something, she said. What? Pemberton has debts, gambling debts, a lot of them. She handed him the letter, and they're owed to some very dangerous people. Rowan scanned the letter, his mind racing. Where did you get this? I have my sources. Lydia's smile was sharp. The question is, what do we do with it? Rowan looked at her, this fierce, brilliant woman who turned his entire world upside down. We use it, he said. We find the people he owes and we offer them something better than money. What's better than money? Rowan's smile matched hers. Revenge. The gambling den sat in the bowels of Whitechapel, hidden behind a fishmonger's shop that reeked of rot and brine. Rowan descended the narrow stairs with Lydia at his side, both of them dressed plainly to avoid attention. A heavy door blocked their path. Rowan knocked. 3 slow, 2 fast. The pattern Lydia's source had given them. A slot opened. Eyes peered out. Who's asking? Someone with information about Lord Pemberton, Rowan said. The eyes narrowed, then the door swung open. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and sweat. Men hunched over card tables, coins clinking, voices rising and falling in the rhythm of winning and losing. A few looked up when Rowan and Lydia entered, then quickly looked away. A woman approached, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, with scars on her knuckles that told a story of violence survived. You're looking for Mr. Graves, she said. It wasn't a question. We are. Follow me. She led them through the den to a back room where a man sat alone, counting money with the precision of someone who'd learned not to trust anyone else to do it. He was lean, graying, with the kind of face that had seen too much and forgotten how to smile. Mr. Graves? The woman said. Visitors. Graves looked up, his gaze sweeping over them with clinical detachment. You don't look like you belong here, he said. We don't, Lydia replied. But we have something you want. Everyone thinks they have something I want. Graves set down his money. What makes you special? Pemberton owes you £12,000, Rowan said. We can get it for you. Graves went very still. How do you know about that? Because we make it our business to know. Lydia stepped forward. And we know he's been stalling, making excuses, promising payment that never comes. He's good for it. Is he? Rowan pulled a folded paper from his coat. According to this, he's mortgaged 3 properties in the last 6 months. His investments in the railway venture collapsed last quarter, and his primary income stream, a shipping contract with the East India Company, just got cancelled. He slid the paper across the table. Graves read it slowly, his expression darkening with each line. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It does if it's fake. It's not, Lydia said. You can verify every detail. Pemberton is broke, or he will be soon. Graves leaned back, studying them. And what do you want in exchange for this information? We want you to call in the debt, Rowan said, publicly, loudly. Make sure everyone in London knows he's a deadbeat. That's it? That's it. Graves smiled, thin and cold. You want to ruin him. We want justice, Lydia said. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Graves tapped the paper. But I appreciate honesty. So here's mine. I don't care about your justice. I care about my money. Then get it from him, Rowan said, before he runs. He won't run. Men like Pemberton don't run. They bluff and scheme and convince themselves they're invincible right up until the moment the walls close in. Graves stood. But you're right about one thing. I'm tired of waiting. So you'll do it? I'll think about it. We don't have time for you to think. Graves' eyes sharpened. You're in a hurry. That means you're desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. We're not desperate, Lydia said. We're motivated. Same thing. It's not. She met his gaze head on. Desperate people beg. We're offering you a solution. Graves studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. I'll call in the debt. Tomorrow. At the exchange. Why the exchange? Rowan asked. Because that's where Pemberton likes to conduct business. Where he feels powerful. Graves smiled. And I want him to feel it when everything falls apart. They left the den as the sun was setting, the streets of Whitechapel shadowed and dangerous. Rowan kept Lydia close, one hand on the knife he'd tucked into his belt. Do you think he'll actually do it? Lydia asked. I think he wants his money more than he cares about being polite. Good. They walked in silence for a while, navigating the maze of alleys and side streets. That was clever, Rowan said, getting that information on Pemberton's finances. I had help. From who? Lydia hesitated. My father. Rowan stopped walking. You wrote to him? I didn't have a choice. He has connections we don't. She looked away. I know you don't like him. It's not that. Then what? Rowan exhaled slowly. I'm just surprised he helped. He's still my father. He may have sold me off like property, but he doesn't want me to suffer. She paused. Or maybe he just hates Pemberton more than he loves his pride. Either way, it worked. They kept walking, and Rowan felt something shift between them. Not just partnership, something deeper. The next day they stood at the edge of the Royal Exchange, watching. The Exchange was London's beating heart, a massive courtyard surrounded by columns, filled with merchants and traders shouting prices, making deals, fortunes won and lost on handshakes and promises. Pemberton was there holding court near the center, surrounded by sycophants and hangers-on. He looked confident, untouchable. That was about to change. Graves appeared at the north entrance, flanked by 2 men who looked like they could break bones without breaking a sweat. He moved through the crowd with purpose, and people parted for him instinctively. When he reached Pemberton, the noise around them seemed to dim. Lord Pemberton, Graves said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. We need to talk about your debt. Pemberton's smile froze. I'm sorry, do I know you? You should. You owe me £12,000. The crowd went silent. Pemberton's face flushed. This is hardly the place. It's exactly the place. You've been dodging me for months. Now I'm done waiting. Graves pulled out a contract, holding it up for everyone to see. Payment was due 3 weeks ago. You've defaulted. That's absurd. I have assets, mortgaged assets, worthless investments, empty promises. Graves stepped closer. You're broke, Pemberton, and everyone here is about to know it. Pemberton looked around wildly, seeing the stares, the whispers spreading like wildfire. This is slander. It's fact. And unless you have 12,000 pounds in your pocket right now, I'm filing a claim with the courts this afternoon. Pemberton's composure shattered. You can't do this. Watch me. Rowan felt Lydia's hand tighten on his arm. He glanced down and saw the fierce satisfaction in her eyes. Pemberton tried to salvage it, started making excuses, promising payments, invoking names of powerful friends who would vouch for him. But Graves didn't care, and neither did the crowd, who were already calculating what Pemberton's fall meant for their own interests. Within minutes, Pemberton was alone, the sycophants melting away like snow in sunlight. Graves turned and walked out, his point made. Pemberton stood there, trembling with rage and humiliation, his reputation in tatters. Then his eyes found Rowan and Lydia standing at the edge of the courtyard. The recognition was instant. The fury that followed was palpable. You, Pemberton hissed. Rowan didn't flinch. Us. Pemberton pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage. You did this! We didn't do anything, Lydia said calmly. You destroyed yourself. I'll ruin you, both of you. With what? Rowan gestured around them. Your credibility, your fortune, your reputation? They're all gone. I have friends. You had friends. Past tense. Lydia stepped forward. Those people only stayed because they thought you had power. Now they know the truth. Pemberton's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Rowan thought he might actually swing. Instead, he leaned in close, his voice a venomous whisper. This isn't over. Yes, Lydia said quietly. It is. She turned and walked away, and Rowan followed. Behind them, Pemberton stood alone in the center of the exchange, broken. That night, back at the rented townhouse, Lydia poured them both wine. We did it, she said, handing Rowan a glass. We did. They drank in silence, the weight of the day settling over them. Do you think he'll retaliate? Lydia asked. Probably, but it won't matter. Rowan set down his glass. He's lost his leverage, his money, his reputation, his power. It's all gone. And without those things, he's just another desperate man. Lydia nodded, but there was something uncertain in her expression. What is it? Rowan asked. I keep thinking about what you said. At the exchange. Which part? That I'm yours. She looked at him. Did you mean it? Rowan's breath caught. He'd said it in anger, in the heat of protecting her from Pemberton. But standing here now, looking at this woman who'd fought beside him, challenged him, saved him in ways he was only beginning to understand. Yes, he said. I meant it. Lydia's eyes searched his face. Why? Because somewhere between hating this marriage and surviving it, I stopped pretending. He stepped closer. You're not just my wife on paper anymore, Lydia. You're... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. I'm what? She pressed. Everything. It came out rough, raw. You're everything. Lydia's breath hitched. Then she closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was different from the kiss in the garden, slower, deeper, full of all the things they hadn't said and couldn't say. When they finally pulled apart, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. I never wanted this to be real, he admitted. I thought I could keep it simple, transactional. And now? Now I don't know how I ever lived without you. Lydia's hands came up to frame his face. I was supposed to stay untouchable, protected. I wasn't supposed to feel what? This. She kissed him again, softer this time. You. They stood there in the candlelight, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a shifting world. Then Lydia pulled back slightly. We should go back, she said, to Blackthorn. Why? Because we have an estate to rebuild, and I want to do it with you, properly this time. Rowan smiled. Properly. As partners, as equals. She paused. as whatever this is turning into. And what is it turning into? Lydia's smile was slow and genuine. I don't know yet, but I think I want to find out. They returned to Blackthorn 2 days later to find the estate in chaos. Not destructive chaos, creative chaos. The tenants had banded together in their absence, organizing work parties to clear debris from the burned stables. Mrs. Dawes had rallied the household staff to deep clean the manor from top to bottom. Even the children from the village had shown up, pulling weeds from the gardens and sweeping the drives. When Rowan and Lydia's carriage pulled up, everyone stopped working and turned. For a moment there was silence. Then old John Merrick stepped forward, his hat in his hands. Your Grace, he said, addressing Lydia, we heard what happened in London. Heard you stood up to that lord who's been causing trouble. Lydia glanced at Rowan, surprised. News travels fast. It does when it's worth spreading. John smiled. We wanted to do something to show our thanks. For what? For fighting for us. For this place. He gestured around. Most lords would have sold the land and moved on. But you stayed, both of you. Rowan felt something tighten in his chest. Tom Merrick stepped out of the crowd, looking uncomfortable but determined. I was wrong about you, he said gruffly. Both of you. Thought you'd be like the old Duke. Thought you'd bleed us dry and disappear. And now? Rowan asked. Now I think maybe we've got a chance. Tom nodded toward the stables. We're building it back. Better this time. Stronger. Lydia's eyes shone. You don't have to. We want to, John interrupted. This is our home, too. The crowd murmured agreement. Lydia looked at Rowan, and he saw the same emotion reflected in her eyes that he felt in his chest. Pride, belonging, hope. Thank you, Lydia said, her voice thick. All of you. Over the next weeks, the estate transformed. The new stables rose from the ashes, built with timber donated by tenants and labor volunteered by everyone who could swing a hammer. The manor itself was scrubbed and polished until it gleamed. The gardens were tamed, the fields replanted, the fences repaired. Rowan and Lydia worked alongside everyone else, hauling lumber, mending fences, planting seeds. They ate meals in the kitchens with the staff, shared jokes with the tenants, and slowly, carefully, built something that felt like community. One evening, Rowan found Lydia sitting on the manor steps, watching the sunset. Tired? He asked, sitting beside her. Exhausted, but the good kind. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. I've been thinking, Rowan said, about what you said in London, about being partners. And? I think we should make it official. Lydia turned to look at him. What do you mean? I mean putting your name on the estate documents, making you a legal co-owner. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I had this drawn up. It gives you equal authority over all decisions, financial, operational, everything. Lydia stared at the document, then at him. You're serious? Completely. Rowan, She stopped, searching for words. This is your family's legacy. No, it's our legacy now. He handed her the paper. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm not my father, trying to do this alone, but I don't want to do it alone anymore. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say yes. She laughed, wiping her eyes. Yes, of course, yes. Rowan pulled her close, and they sat there as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. We're going to be all right, Lydia said quietly. We are. Even with everything that happened, Pemberton, the fire, all of it, we made it through. We did. Rowan pressed a kiss to her temple. Because we did it together. But peace didn't come easily. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Rowan recognized the seal immediately, Pemberton's family crest. He opened it with a sense of dread. The letter was brief. Your Grace, you may have won this round, but the game is far from over. I have friends you haven't met yet, resources you can't imagine, and a very long memory. This is not a threat. It is a promise. We will meet again. P. Rowan crumpled the letter, fury rising. Lydia appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" He handed her the remains of the letter. She read it, her expression darkening. "He won't stop." "I know." "So what do we do?" Rowan looked at her, this fierce, brilliant woman who'd turned his life inside out and made him better for it. "We keep building," he said. "We keep fighting, and we make this place so strong that nothing he does can touch it." Lydia nodded slowly. "And if he comes back?" "Then we'll be ready." She crossed the room, taking his hands in hers. "I meant what I said in London," she said, "about wanting to find out what this is, what we are." "So did I." "Then let's stop waiting. Let's stop pretending this is just survival." Her voice was steady, certain. "I love you, Rowan. And I think you love me too." Rowan's heart stopped. No one had ever said those words to him before. Not his parents, not his few scattered friends. No one. Until now. "I do," he said, the words coming easier than he expected. "I love you." Lydia smiled, bright and real and utterly transformative. "Then we're going to be fine," she said. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it, together." And standing there in the study of Blackthorn Manor, surrounded by ledgers and plans and dreams of a future they were building from scratch, Rowan believed her. The war wasn't over. Pemberton was still out there, nursing his wounds and plotting revenge. But for the first time in his life, Rowan wasn't afraid. Because he wasn't alone anymore. He had Lydia, and together they were unstoppable. A week later, Rowan stood in the village square watching as the new market stalls were erected. It was Lydia's idea to create a central trading hub where tenants could sell their goods without having to travel to London. The village was bustling with energy, people calling to each other, children running between the stalls, life blooming in a place that had felt half dead just months ago. Lydia appeared at his side, linking her arm through his. "Look at this," she said softly. "Look at what we built." "You built it," Rowan corrected. "I just followed your lead." "We built it." She squeezed his arm. "Stop trying to give me all the credit." He smiled, pulling her closer. In the distance, church bells rang out, marking the hour, and for the first time in years, Rowan felt something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. Hope lasted exactly 3 weeks. Then Pemberton made his final move. It started with whispers. Rowan heard them first at the market, murmurs that stopped when he approached, conversations that died the moment he entered a room. The tenants looked at him differently now, their easy camaraderie replaced by something cautious, uncertain. He found Lydia in the drawing room, staring at a newspaper someone had left on the table. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer, just slid the paper toward him. The headline screamed across the top of the society page. "Duchess of Blackthorn's scandalous past revealed." Rowan's blood turned to ice. The article detailed everything. Lydia's supposed ugliness revealed as a fabrication. Her reasons for spreading the rumors twisted into manipulation and deceit. And worst of all, accusations that she'd married Rowan under false pretenses, tricking him into a union with a woman of questionable morals and dubious character. It was signed anonymously, but Rowan knew exactly who'd written it. "He's destroying me," Lydia said quietly. Her voice was hollow, distant. "Everything we built. He's tearing it apart. This is lies, all of it. It doesn't matter if it's true. People will believe it anyway." She looked up at him, and the defeat in her eyes cut deeper than any blade. "You should have married someone easier. Don't." "I'm serious, Rowan. You could have had a simple life. A quiet wife. No scandal, no fights, no you." He crossed the room, kneeling in front of her chair. "Do you think I want simple? After everything we've been through? After everything we've built? I've ruined your reputation. My father ruined my reputation years ago. You gave me a reason to rebuild it." Lydia's hands trembled. "The tenants will make their own choices, just like we did." But over the next days, it became clear that those choices weren't in their favor. 2 tenant families packed up and left, citing the scandal as their reason. Others became withdrawn, reluctant to engage. Even Mrs. Dawes, who'd warmed to Lydia over the months, seemed unsure how to navigate the accusations. The breaking point came when Rowan rode into the village and found a crowd gathered outside the church. Someone had painted words across the door in red. Liar. Fraud. Deceiver. Were you? Rowan dismounted, rage building in his chest. Who did this? He demanded. Silence. Then Tom Merrick stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Your Grace, people are upset. The things in that article are lies. Maybe, but the rumors about her fabricating her appearance, those are true, aren't they? Rowan felt the crowd's eyes on him, waiting. Yes, he said. She spread those rumors to protect herself from a man who was trying to force her into marriage. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. So she admits to lying, someone called out. She admits to survival, Rowan shot back. There's a difference. Is there? Tom's voice was hard. How do we know she's not lying about everything else? About caring for this estate? About you? Rowan's hands clenched. Because I know her, and I trust her. You've known her less than a year. I've known her long enough. The crowd wasn't convinced. He could see it in their faces, the doubt, the suspicion, the easy willingness to believe the worst. She saved this estate, Rowan said, his voice rising. She lowered your rents, forgave your debts, fought for you when no one else would. And this is how you repay her? With respect, Your Grace, old John Merrick spoke up, his voice sad. We don't know what to believe anymore. Rowan looked around at these people he'd lived among, worked beside, broken bread with, and saw the cracks Pemberton had created. Fine, he said quietly, believe what you want, but I'm not abandoning her. Not now, not ever. He rode back to the manor in silence, the weight of failure pressing down on him. When he found Lydia, she was in their bedroom, packing. What are you doing? Rowan asked. Leaving. No. Rowan. I said no. He grabbed her hand, stopping her. We don't run. I'm not running. I'm protecting you. Her voice cracked. If I'm gone, the scandal dies. You can rebuild your reputation. Find someone better. There is no one better. You don't know that. I do. He pulled her close, forcing her to look at him. I know you, Lydia. I know you're fierce and brilliant and completely terrifying. I know you challenge me every single day and make me want to be better. And I know that without you, none of this, the estate, the tenants, my entire life, means anything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm going to destroy everything you've worked for. Then we'll destroy it together and build something new. He cupped her face. But I'm not letting you go. Not because of Pemberton, not because of scandal, not for anything. You're an idiot, probably. He smiled despite everything. But I'm your idiot. Lydia laughed through her tears, leaning into him. What do we do? We fight back. Rowan's voice hardened. And this time, we end it for good. The plan came together over the next 2 days. Rowan reached out to every contact he had in London. Minor nobles who owed him favors, merchants who'd benefited from the estate's revival, even a few journalists who were tired of Pemberton's manipulation of the press. Lydia, meanwhile, did what she did best, gathered evidence. She compiled records of Pemberton's debts, his failed investments, his harassment. She tracked down 3 other women he'd pursued, women who'd been too afraid to speak out before but were willing to now, seeing Lydia stand her ground. And she drafted a letter, not a defense, but an attack. Read this, she said, handing it to Rowan. He scanned the pages, his eyebrows rising. This is brutal. He started a war. I'm finishing it. The letter laid out everything. Pemberton's predatory behavior, his financial ruin, his attempts to destroy Lydia when she refused him. It was detailed, damning, and completely verifiable. If we publish this, Rowan said slowly, there's no going back. I know. He'll retaliate. Let him try. Lydia's eyes were hard. I'm done being afraid of him. Rowan looked at her, this woman who'd been cornered, hunted, and nearly broken, but had refused to stay down. Then let's do it. They sent the letter to 5 major newspapers simultaneously, along with supporting documentation. By the time Pemberton realized what was happening, it was too late. The story broke 2 days later. Lord Pemberton's Reign of Terror. Multiple women come forward with accusations. The article was devastating. It detailed not just Pemberton's pursuit of Lydia, but a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years. Women from 3 different counties had stories, some similar to Lydia's, others worse. And because the documentation was so thorough, so undeniable, the public turned on him with the same viciousness they'd directed at Lydia. Within a week, Pemberton was a pariah. His club memberships were revoked. His invitations dried up. Former friends crossed the street to avoid him. And when the magistrate opened an investigation into the stable fire, prompted by the tenant farmer's testimony, Pemberton fled London entirely. Rowan stood on the manor steps, reading the latest dispatch, when Lydia joined him. "He's gone," he said, "for now. For good, I think. He's lost everything, his reputation, his money, his power." Rowan folded the paper. "He's got nothing left to fight with." Lydia was quiet for a moment. "I thought I'd feel better, vindicated." "And you don't?" "I just feel tired." She leaned against the railing, and angry that it took this long, that he got away with it for so many years. Rowan moved beside her, taking her hand. "But he didn't get away with it. Not in the end. Only because I had you." She looked at him. "If I'd been alone." "You were never alone. Not really." He squeezed her hand, and now everyone knows the truth. That truth came home the following Sunday. Rowan and Lydia attended church for the first time since the scandal broke. They discussed skipping it, avoiding the inevitable stares and whispers, but Lydia had refused. "We face it," she'd said, "together." So they walked into the church side by side, heads high. The congregation went silent when they entered. Rowan felt Lydia's hand tighten on his arm, but she didn't falter. They took their usual pew near the front. The vicar began the service, his voice steady, but his eyes sympathetic. When it came time for the sermon, he set aside his prepared notes. "I want to speak today about truth," he said, "about the difference between what we believe and what we know, about the danger of assumptions." The congregation shifted uncomfortably. "Many of us," the vicar continued, "heard rumors about the Duchess. We believed them because they were easy to believe, because they confirmed what we thought we already knew." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "But we were wrong, and rather than admit that, some of us doubled down, painted accusations on church doors, abandoned the very people who'd been fighting for us." Rowan felt eyes turning toward them. "The Duchess and the Duke didn't abandon us when things got hard. They stayed, they fought. They built something here that was worth saving." The vicar's voice softened, "And we repaid them with suspicion and judgment." Silence filled the church. "So today," the vicar said, "I'm asking us to do better, to choose truth over rumor, to choose loyalty over fear." When the service ended, Rowan and Lydia stood to leave, but before they could reach the door, old John Merrick stepped into their path. "Your Grace," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you an apology, both of you." Lydia started to speak, but John shook his head. "Let me finish. I was wrong. We all were. We let fear and gossip turn us against the best thing that's happened to this estate in decades." He looked at Lydia. "You didn't have to stay. You could have left when things got ugly, but you didn't." "This is my home too," Lydia said quietly. "It is, and we're lucky to have you." One by one, other tenants stepped forward. Tom Merrick, looking sheepish. The families who'd stayed, even the 2 who'd left, who'd returned quietly the night before. "We were scared," Tom admitted. "Scared of losing everything again. So we believed the worst because it felt safer than trusting something good." "I understand," Lydia said. "Do you?" Tom's voice was rough. "Because I don't know if I would, if I were you." Lydia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Fear makes us do foolish things. I know that better than anyone." She held out her hand. Tom stared at it, then gripped it firmly. "We'll do better," he said. "All of us." "So will we," Lydia replied. The walk back to the manor felt different, lighter. When they reached the gates, Rowan pulled Lydia to a stop. What? She asked. I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Lydia's eyes widened. Rowan, just open it. Inside was a ring, simple gold with a single emerald that matched her eyes. I know we're already married, Rowan said, but this, what we have now, it's not the marriage we started with. It's something we chose, something we built. Lydia's hands trembled as she lifted the ring. I wanted you to have something that represents that, Rowan continued. Not obligation, not transaction, just us. It's beautiful. So are you. Lydia looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I never thought I'd have this. A home, a partner, someone who actually sees me. I see you, Rowan said. All of you. And I'm not going anywhere. She kissed him then, right there in the middle of the drive, and Rowan felt something click into place, something he hadn't even realized was missing. 6 months later, Blackthorn Manor hosted its first ball in a decade. The grand hall had been restored, chandeliers gleaming, floors polished, every surface scrubbed until it shone. Music drifted through the open windows, and guests filled the space in a riot of color and conversation. Rowan stood at the edge of the room, watching Lydia move through the crowd. She was in her element, charming merchants and minor nobles alike, making connections that would benefit the estate for years to come. She caught his eye and smiled, and Rowan felt his chest tighten with something that felt dangerously close to contentment. You look happy, Your Grace. Rowan turned to find Gerald Vale beside him, a glass of wine in hand. Mr. Vale, Rowan said, surprised. I didn't know you were coming. Lydia invited me. Thought it might be time to mend some fences. Vale took a sip of his wine. She was right, as usual. They stood in silence for a moment, watching Lydia laugh at something one of the guests said. I was wrong about you, Vale said finally. In what way? I thought you were just another desperate noble looking for a cash infusion. Thought you'd take the money and ignore my daughter. He paused. But you didn't. No, I didn't. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Rowan answered anyway. More than I thought possible. Vale nodded slowly. Good. Because she deserves that. Deserves someone who sees past the money and the complications to the person underneath. She does. And if you ever forget that, you'll destroy me. I know. Rowan smiled faintly. But you won't need to, because I won't forget. Vale studied him for a long moment, then extended his hand. Rowan shook it. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and the servants had retired, Rowan found Lydia on the terrace, looking out over the grounds. Successful evening? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Very. She leaned back against him. Did you see how many orders we got for the wool? And 3 different merchants want to invest in the grain cooperative. I saw. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You're brilliant. We're brilliant. Fair enough. They stood there in the moonlight, the estate quiet around them. Do you ever think about how different this could have been? Lydia asked. If I'd been what you expected? All the time. And I'm grateful I was wrong. Rowan turned her to face him. You terrified me at first. This fierce, complicated woman who refused to be ignored. I thought you'd make my life impossible. I did make your life impossible. You made my life worth living. He cupped her face. There's a difference. Lydia's eyes shone. I love you. I love you too. She kissed him slowly, thoroughly, and Rowan felt the last remnants of the man he'd been. The desperate duke, the reluctant husband, the son trying to escape his father's shadow, finally fall away. He was just Rowan now, and that was enough. A year later, Blackthorn Manor was unrecognizable. The fields were green and productive. The villages thrived. The tenant farms were prosperous enough that several families had expanded, building new cottages and barns. And in the manor itself, life had taken root in ways Rowan had never imagined. He found Lydia in the nursery, standing over a cradle, her hand resting on her rounded stomach. Talking to them again? He asked softly. She looked up, smiling. Someone has to tell them what they're getting into. And what are they getting into? Chaos. Love. A mother who's going to teach them to question everything, and a father who's going to worry constantly. Rowan moved beside her, placing his hand over hers. Sounds terrible. Sounds perfect. They stood there, looking down at their daughter, 3 months old, sleeping peacefully despite all the noise and activity of the household, and Rowan felt something he'd never felt in this house before. Peace. Do you ever regret it? Lydia asked. The wedding, the marriage, all of it. Rowan looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his life and turned everything upside down, who'd challenged him and fought him and loved him despite all his flaws. Not for a second, he said, and he meant it. Because what had started as survival had become something far more valuable. It had become home. The estate would continue to grow. Challenges would come. They always did. But Rowan and Lydia would face them the way they'd faced everything else. Together. As equals. As partners who'd chosen each other, not out of necessity, but out of something far stronger. Love forged in fire, tested by scandal, and proven unbreakable. And in the end, that was worth more than any title or fortune could ever be. That evening, as the sun set over Blackthorn Manor, Rowan stood on the steps with Lydia beside him, their daughter in her arms, watching as the tenants gathered in the courtyard for the harvest festival. Music played, children danced, laughter filled the air. Look at this, Lydia said softly. Look at what we built. We built it, Rowan agreed. But you started it. No. She turned to him, her eyes serious. We started it. That night in the study, when we decided to stop fighting each other and start fighting together. That's when this began. Rowan pulled her close, careful of the baby between them. Then I'm glad we fought. So am I. The festival continued into the night, and long after they'd put their daughter to bed and retired to their own room, Rowan could still hear the distant sounds of celebration. He lay beside Lydia in the darkness, her head on his chest, and thought about the man he'd been on his wedding day, desperate, bitter, resigned to a life of quiet misery. He barely recognized that man anymore. Rowan? Lydia's voice was soft, half asleep. Thank you. For what? For choosing me. Every day, even when it was hard. He pressed a kiss to her hair. You make it easy. Liar. He smiled in the darkness. All right, you make it worth it. Better. They drifted off to sleep wrapped around each other, and Rowan's last thought before sleep claimed him was simple and true. This was what happiness felt like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And absolutely, completely worth every fight. The Duke and Duchess of Blackthorn had built more than an estate. They'd built a legacy, and it would endure long after they were gone. A testament to two people who refused to accept the hand they were dealt, and instead forged something entirely their own. Something rare and beautiful and utterly unbreakable. A partnership. A love story. A life.